All right. Well, hello, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Stephen Placke with Midland Trust. I'm really excited to be able to talk to you guys today about the investment options available to us within a self-directed IRA. We're going to be going through different investment types, obviously, but just as we're getting people in here right now, just know that we are going to be taking questions today, live questions. And so if you have something that you would like to know about our presentation or about Midland Trust, definitely put that in there. We are going to be going over those questions, but just realize we might not get to everyone today. That's okay. We'll be following up with each of the questions after the webinar via email. So just keep that in mind. In the meantime, we'll get started in about 30 seconds. All right, excellent. Well, thanks everybody. Today, I'm very excited to be joined by two of our Midland IRA experts to talk about these investment options. You can see their contact information listed here. I'm joined today by Brandon Hall, who is Midland Trust President, and also Nicholas Betancourt. He is our compliance specialist here. And so, Brandon, how about you just tell us a little bit about your story with Midland, how long you've been with us, and help us get started here today.
Sure, Stephen. I'm happy to be here, by the way. I haven't done one of these webinars in a while, and I really enjoy doing them. So I'm glad to be back on stage, so to speak. I've been with the company for 20 years this summer. Prior to that, we were an accounting firm, which we sold off many, many years ago. And I've seen the development of our company from just a handful of employees all the way up to nearly 75. Seen a lot of changes over the years, and it's been a fun ride. So thanks.
That's awesome. Thanks again for joining us. And Nick, how about you tell us a little bit about yourself, what you do for Midland, and then we'll get started.
Sure. Thank you, Stephen. Definitely happy to be here as well. Happy to be able to share a little bit of my experience here with IRAs and retirement accounts. I've been working with Midland here for going on 2 years in the compliance department. Currently, I'm a compliance specialist, and I do also have my associate in risk management, so a little bit of knowledge from that perspective as well. Just really excited to kind of share some more opportunities about IRAs, and like I said, answer any questions from a compliance perspective that I can help with.
Fantastic. Thanks so much. You can see our guest contact information here. I'll be putting mine up at the end for any other questions that you guys might receive. But if there's something that catches your eye or you just want to know a little bit more about, here's a good place for you guys to go. Just as a reminder, there will be a recording of this webinar sent out. So if you can't catch this information right now, you can either ask for it in the chat, or you can always take a look back on demand at the recording of this webinar. That being said, let's get started. So today, again, we're talking about self-directed IRAs. But I think it's important for all of us just to take a very brief step back and ask ourselves about IRAs in general. What are they? What are the advantages or the superpowers of investing in an IRA specifically? And so just to give us a base level understanding, make sure that we're all starting off on the right foot, we're going to start with that, the power of IRA investing. So the biggest thing about IRAs or retirement accounts is the ability for you to defer your taxes, which leads to greater growth potential of your IRA. Now, the great thing about tax deferral is that long-term capital gains in your IRA, they're not going to be taxed, or any income that is received as a result of owning any investment in the IRA is not going to be added to your personal income taxes. And so this allows you to hold on to your capital and to be able to invest into your next deal. And so with that in mind, that serves as a good basis for us to have this conversation about a self-directed IRA. Okay, I see that we might be having some audio problems. If everyone can hear me, just give me a thumbs up. We have a reaction in there. If you cannot hear me, please let me know. All right, I'm seeing some thumbs up. Thank you so much. Scott and Joy, everyone will be receiving a recording of this webinar today, so we'll be sure to get you one as well. All right, Brandon, do you want to talk to us a little bit about self-directed IRAs, your industry perspective? You've been in this industry for almost 2 decades now. I want to hear from your perspective about self-directed IRAs, and any sort of information we can glean from you would be amazing.
Sure, Stephen. That term self-directed gets thrown out quite a bit, and it's really grown in popularity over the 20 years that I've been in the industry. When I started, I think it was like 1% of IRAs were in self-directed accounts, and now it's more like 3.5%. But I do want to point out that self-direction is really it's a made-up term. There's no such thing as a self-directed IRA. There are 4 types of IRAs out there. There's a Roth and a traditional, and then there's 2 employer-sponsored IRAs, which are called SEP and Simple. And those are the only 4 types of IRAs that there currently are. Any of those types of IRAs can be self-directed. So when we use the term self-directed IRA, we're more describing the custodian or administrator than we are the type of IRA itself. Okay, anybody can have a self-directed IRA at any firm. But self-direction basically means that you're making your own investment decisions. And so for a full understanding of self-direction, I just kind of want to explain our niche, because we're very much a niche business. Our industry is dominated by stockbrokers and banks. As I said before, 97% of IRA money is in stock brokerages or banks. And they do a fine job. I have nothing against them. I have accounts at brokerages and banks myself. But when you're at a stock brokerage or a bank, they limit your investment choices to the products that they sell. So they have an entirely different business model. They can afford to do free record keeping or administration of the accounts, because they're going to make money on commissions on the products that they sell, asset management fees, or advisory fees. Or in the case of a bank, they'll be loaning your money out the back door at a higher rate of return than what they're paying you. So again, they'll do free administrative services because they know they're going to earn revenue in other capacities. Midland, on the other hand, doesn't operate as a bank or a brokerage. We don't sell any investments. We don't do loans out the back door. We don't give legal, tax, or investment advice. Therefore, our only source of revenue is really charging an administrative fee to administer assets in the account. So we charge a flat administrative fee. On average, it's like $325 a year. It's a little bit more the first year because of transaction fees and setup fees, but it's not very expensive to do. And because we don't benefit from the types of assets that our clients buy, we don't limit our clients' choices. So in this presentation, you're going to learn a lot about the different types of assets that we hold. But for example, Charles Schwab, Fidelity, TD Ameritrade, Edward Jones, none of those companies are going to let you buy real estate. And the reason for that is, number one, they don't know how to make any money on it. That's the biggest reason. Number two, they don't want to deal with the administrative burdens, tax bills and closings and insurance and rental income. They want you to push a button, you own a stock or a mutual fund, and it's just a much simpler transaction. And then the third reason they don't want you to won't let you invest in real estate is they don't want to deal with valuation issues. So part of our role as a third-party custodian is to report on Form 5498 the account value at year end to the IRS each year. And Charles Schwab and Fidelity, they know what the price of Apple stock is on December 31st. Their computer systems tell them this. But how are they supposed to know what an LLC in Costa Rica is worth, or a private oil and gas venture in Texas? And furthermore, how are we supposed to know that? So we have an arrangement with our clients that every year at the beginning of the year, we reach out and they supply us with documentation supporting the value of their investment. If it's real estate, they usually just use the tax assessor's value. If it's through an investment through a third-party investment sponsor, usually the third-party investment sponsor will provide that valuation. So we're able to update our records, do proper reporting to both the client and the IRS, and we don't have a problem in our business model handling those kind of assets. So in summary, we really open the door for clients to hold alternative investments, which gives them more control and diversification over their retirement accounts.
Yeah, that's so good. And knowing that information really helps us talk about the benefits of self-direction specifically. We discussed about how that diversification is possible because you're open to all these different investment types that aren't necessarily sold in your traditional brokerage or bank accounts. And so one of the biggest investment benefits that we have is the ability to invest in what you know. Self-directed IRAs open up these investment opportunities, as we said, so that people who are cognizant of different markets, whether that be real estate, whether that be futures or foreign exchange, which we'll be talking both about here very shortly, that gives you the ability to invest in what you know with confidence. You're not having to buy into a product or a hedge fund that you don't really fully understand. This is intended for individuals who are looking to diversify and looking to invest with confidence in products that they know. So that's really good. Thank you so much.
Right. And it may not be for everybody, Stephen. I mean, my grandmother is 96 years old. You know, the last thing she probably wants is self-direction or control of her investment choices. You know, so it's got to be for somebody who wants to take control. They want to be willing to vet their investments. And I use real estate agents as an example quite often on this particular slide because we say they get to invest in what they know and understand. And real estate agents, they believe that they understand the real estate market in their area better than they do the S&P 500. So they like to self-direct into investments that they know and understand. And some of them will go all in on what they know and understand. Others will keep half of their money at a brokerage in traditional stocks and mutual funds, and half with Midland in alternatives. So you can actually have IRAs at multiple institutions doing different things.
Yeah, that's so true. That half and half strategy is one that we do see very commonly here. You can have multiple IRAs at different institutions, of course, and like you said, gives you the ability to invest in, you know, some of the less self-managed ones, and also invest into exactly what you know. Now, Nick, I want to bring you into the conversation here as our compliance specialist. You help a lot of our investors onboard different types of investment types. And so I do want to get your perspective and just give us the summary of the IRS stance on some of these investment types. What can a self-directed IRA invest in?
Thanks, Stephen. Yeah, I mean, it's a great question. And, you know, funnily enough, if you, after this presentation, you know, were to go to the IRS website and start reading in IRAs, you could look all day and in there, they don't specify what you can invest in. And so we like to talk from the perspective a lot of times of really they prescribe what you can't invest in more than what you can. And ultimately, it's pretty limited what they don't want you to hold or invest in your IRA. Generally, it's limited just to collectibles and life insurance. There's a number of reasons for that, but you know, essentially like a fine wine collection, you know, a Monet, things like that. It's, you know, comes down to valuation, things like that. So that is something prohibited. And as well, life insurance, just with retirement accounts and life insurance, the crossover there, you know, it's something the IRS tries to avoid. But beyond that, genuinely, so many opportunities are open as far as, you know, all sorts of different things. Almost any kind of investment that you can think of can be facilitated, you know, with some sort of vehicle in an IRA, except for these two. Like I said, they're specifically prescribed by the IRS.
Yeah, that's so good, Nick. Yeah, thank you for giving us that information. So that should really excite a lot of people. If the only things that you cannot invest in are collectibles and life insurance, that leaves a whole wide world available of powerful investment options, just like we're talking about here today. Now, I know why the audience is here today. They want to hear about specific investment options available to them. So we're going to break down the top 5 that we see our clients using and give you some information about those investment types to maybe get those creative juices flowing, maybe get you curious about how a self-directed IRA can work for you, whether or not you already have one. So let's talk about that right now. The top 5 that we'll be talking about today, and if you're taking notes, these are going to be the main 5 points today. We're going to be talking about real estate, being held in a self-directed IRA. This is something we talked about recently. If I'm a familiar face to some of you, that's because we had a live podcast just like this just a few weeks ago. So we're going to be touching on that again because a lot of you had good questions about that. The second that we'll be talking about is kind of like a little more of a sophisticated term. It's called private placements. We'll be breaking down exactly what that means and different types of private placements that you can put in your self-directed IRA. This is a very popular investment type. Next, we're going to be talking about trading accounts, specifically futures or foreign exchange. Next, we're also going to be talking about single and multi-member LLCs. Nick works with our team at Midland Forms, is going to be able to give us some really good information about this very powerful tool that you can use in a self-directed IRA. It's really astonishing what you can do with it. Lastly, we're going to be talking about private lending or loans from your IRA. This is a way that you can basically invest through the vehicle of debt and get back principal and interest. That'll be the last one that we talk about today. Okay, so that being said, we're going to move ahead and go ahead and talk about real estate. This is a little bit in my wheelhouse just because, again, another fresh topic, and I've helped hundreds of real estate investors myself get started with the self-directed IRA. So different types of real estate that we see our investors being able to hold, it's really such a wide variety. We see anything from like vacant land to multifamily. We see commercial real estate like strip malls. We see residential like single family homes. We see such a plethora of real estate investment types. We see some that are cash flowing. We see some that are, we're riding the market. We're going to buy and hold and sell. So there are so many strategies that you can really utilize within a self-directed IRA using real estate. Again, such a powerful, flexible tool for our investors out there. There are a couple of rules that come with real estate investing specifically that are important to know. First off, any investment that's made in an IRA, real estate or not, the purpose of it is for investment use. That means that you are there to make a positive investment. So what that means specifically is you cannot use any real estate or property personally. So if you buy vacant land, you can't go hunting on it personally. The IRS prohibits that. If you have a house that you have within your self-directed IRA, sorry, that's not a vacation home. That is for rental use, for business, or for investment use particularly. Now, one thing that we did get a question about from Bruce here is when holding real estate in the IRA, are expenses associated with the property deductible? Now, we're going to be talking about this right now. Income and expenses belong to the IRA. If the property that you hold within the IRA is having expenses associated with that, say maybe a tax bill, or maybe you want to repaint the property, the answer is no. It is not deductible, and here's why. Anytime that your property makes money, say from rental payment, or has an expense associated with it, say you want to repair a fence, those all belong to the IRA. So there's no expense that you're going to be paying for out of pocket. The IRA is going to have to pay for that out of the cash balance. So if, say, you get a tax bill, the IRA is going to pay for that tax bill. So no, those expenses are not going to be deductible, Brian, because it's within the context of an IRA. So that's a very brief flyover of real estate IRAs. I realize that. We have a full 40-minute live podcast that we just did on real estate IRAs. We're going to be sending out a link to you guys here shortly after this podcast to give you access to that. You can also find it on our events page at midlandtrust.com. Okay. Now, moving forward, Brandon, I kind of want to get you tagged in here. We're going to be talking about private placements. Now, again, a little bit more of a sophisticated term. Can you shed some light into that and help us parse out what these 4 different types are, perhaps?
Sure. So private placements actually make up our most common investment here at Midland. Used to, as we were building the business, I think real estate was our top most commonly held assets. But as we've built up a reputation in the country for having a good service level, we get a lot of referrals from investment sponsors who have investment offerings. They have investors that are interested in their offerings, and they need an IRA custodian to handle the transaction for them, and they refer those clients quite often to us. There's really 4 kind of categories of private placements, and I'm not going to get into detail in each one of these, but you can buy private stock or private equity in some companies. It depends on how the companies want to structure their investments. But we have clients that buy community bank stock. We have clients that have bought into private stock in like a oil and gas royalty program in Texas. I'm just making that up as an example. There's a billion different examples you could have when it comes to private stock or equity ownership. Venture capital would be, typically startups that are looking to raise capital to get going, get out of the gates, like you see these shows on television. Shark Tank, I believe, is one of them. These are individuals that are looking to raise capital to try to get off the ground. Hedge funds, syndications. I'm just making all these up, but there are a common syndication would be a real estate syndication, where you have an investment group that's looking to build a strip mall, let's say, and they need investors at, let's just say, $25,000 or $50,000 a share, and they're pooling all this money together in a syndication to raise capital, build the building, and then eventually either lease it out or sell it, or whatever the intentions are of the business. So those are all examples of private placements. There are examples of that I gave you in that example that are publicly traded that you can invest in through Schwab or Fidelity. I mean, there are publicly traded hedge funds and publicly traded REITs and things like that. And there's publicly traded oil and gas companies like Texaco and Shell. But if you're interested in a private investment, a private oil and gas, a private syndication, a private hedge fund, your brokerages are not going to be able to handle those transactions for you for the reasons I stated previously. So.
Excellent. Thanks for that flyover, Brandon. We're going to be jumping over into our next asset class now. So we already discussed real estate and private placements. Another common asset type that we see self-directed clients using is futures and foreign exchange trading accounts. Now, futures in Forex trading accounts, these are typically used to find opportunities in volatile markets. Now, a futures or Forex trading account has to be utilized through Midland by the use of a brokerage partner that Midland has. So if you're wanting to trade futures, Midland's not a brokerage platform ourselves. We simply onboard the brokerage platform into your account here at Midland. What that means is you have 2 applications that you'll need to complete, a Midland IRA application and then the brokerage application. And then Midland will go ahead and send money from your IRA account here over to your brokerage to trade. If you guys have more questions about futures trading specifically, we do have an upcoming webinar that I'm very excited to announce today. It's going to be on Wednesday, May 17th at this time, 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. It's going to be about IRA investment opportunities in commodity markets, particularly around futures. So what that means for you guys is if this is an asset class that you're interested in, I would definitely put that on your calendar. Again, we're going to be sending out an email with a link to not only some past webinars that we've done, but also a link to register for that as well. So keep a lookout for that. Okay, so private lending. Brandon, I know that there are several strategies that individuals have used in order to invest their self-directed IRA funds, but the use of debt is a particularly interesting one. I wonder if you could help explain for us how private lending works and different strategies that you maybe have seen used by Midland clients to invest successfully here at Midland Trust.
Absolutely, yes. We see lots of private lending at Midland. Before you call me after the meeting and ask me for a list of lenders or a list of borrowers, just know that Midland is not a fiduciary and Midland doesn't play matchmaker when it comes to putting deals together. So we would never provide any lender a list of borrowers or any borrower a list of lenders. But our clients who do lend, some of them do loans on a secured basis. They find somebody, again, I don't know where, maybe they go to local real estate investment clubs, things like that. But they find somebody who maybe, this is just an example, can't qualify for a regular mortgage from a regular bank. and they'll do a short-term loan until that person can qualify, and they'll secure the loan with the mortgage. So basically, their IRA is acting as the bank and holding a mortgage on a property. And if they secure themselves well, which most of our clients who do this are aware of and do, it can be a very low risk investment. I mean, if worst case scenario, the borrower doesn't pay, the foreclosure process can come into play. So if they set themselves up with a nice down payment to protect themselves, they can minimize the risk a little bit. We also have clients that lend on an unsecured basis, a little bit more risky, obviously. I can give you a couple examples. We had a client one time that wanted to loan to her friend who was starting up, I believe it was a women's workout center. I think it was called Curves. I don't know if those are still around, but she was developing this business and she needed capital to get started. And our client lent money to her friend for this purpose, or to the friend's business. You'll also see partnerships that get formed with loans involved. For example, I know somebody that's a member of the local real estate club that he has a lot of capital in his IRA, but he doesn't know how to do rehab work. So he partnered up with somebody else at the real estate club that knows how to do the rehab work, but doesn't have capital. And they partnered up. They had a partnership agreement where one gentleman fronted all the money. The other person did all of the work. Their goal was to flip the property for a profit and then split the proceeds of that transaction between the IRA and the partnership and the rehab worker. So anyway, that's just another example. You do have to be careful. There's usury laws. You can't loan over certain interest rate amounts. And we hold these notes in our vaults here. We have fireproof safes in locked rooms, and we do hold the originals for these notes. But this is a common strategy to get exposure to different industries, whether it be on an individual basis or through a business relationship.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Brandon. Now that we've discussed private lending, I do want us to discuss a very powerful vehicle called the single or multi-member LLC. This is another fantastic vehicle that we see many of our clients utilizing to basically organize different IRA investments. And so, Brandon, if you want to give us just a brief overview of what this would look like, and Nick, I would also love to get your perspective on this, knowing that you work with our Midland Forms team. So, Brandon, do you have something you would like to add about LLCs?
Yes, absolutely. So I'm going to kind of split this slide up into a couple different areas. So you have different types of, you have your privately held LLCs, and then you have a multi-member LLC that would be used for like a public offering, or it would technically be a private offering but to a mass large number of people. So let's start with the multi-member LLC where somebody's raising capital. And I'll just go back to, I'm just making this up again, oil and gas. There's a company in Texas. They want to raise capital. They need X number of millions of dollars. They're going to buy land. They're going to buy equipment. They're going to put the equipment on the land, drill for oil, and pay royalties to the investors. Well, they don't know who their next investor is going to be. So they create an operating agreement. It doesn't list the different owners. The operating agreement just basically defines the company itself. And then that company issues shares of stock through a multi-member LLC, and the client is actually subscribing through a subscription agreement to X numbers of shares of that company. So that's one way that an LLC can raise capital and be funded, is through a subscription agreement, where they don't change the operating agreement every time they add a new investor. They just issue shares of stock through the subscription agreement into the LLC. So that's one way that a multi-member LLC can work. Then you have your more closely held single and multi-member LLC, which would be if Stephen, Nick, and myself wanted to pool money together to buy a property. I wanted to use my IRA. Nick wanted to use his IRA, but Stephen did not. He wanted to use personal cash. We could form a multi-member LLC. This would not have a subscription agreement because we're not adding additional subscribers later. This would just have an operating agreement. On the operating agreement, it would dictate the three owners. One would be Stephen Placke, one would be Midland Trust Company for the benefit of Nicholas Betancourt, and one would be Midland Trust Company for the benefit of Brandon Hall's IRA. And in this case, they could all be a third, or we can do the percentages however we want. Then this LLC goes out and does whatever this LLC wants to do. They just need to be aware that there's prohibited transactions. So you got to make sure you know what's allowed and what's not allowed in the IRA world. But this LLC goes and does what it intends on doing. Let's say it buys a home and flips it, and now the LLC's receives the income from that flip and or the rental income, ongoing rental income, whatever it may be. And ultimately, a third of that income belongs to Stephen Placke. And by the way, yours is going to be taxable, Stephen, because you didn't use your IRA. The other 2/3 is going to flow back to Midland into Nicholas's and mine IRA accounts, and that's not going to be taxable at all because we used our IRA account for that transaction and we didn't touch the money. So that's an example of a closely held multi-member LLC. Then lastly, the thing I want to talk about is a single member LLC. And at the beginning of our 20-year history, there was a lot more debate as to the allowability, I guess, of a single member LLC, where the IRA holder was the manager of the LLC and the IRA was the member of the LLC. So in essence, the client is managing his own IRA-owned LLC. There was some debate about that, but over the 20 years, it's become very clear that the IRS is very aware that this is around, and they have through several court cases, Swanson and Ellis, they've kind of basically admitted that this is okay to do. Now they have tried to shut this down in recent years. The Build Back Better Act, which did not pass last year, did have some verbiage in there that would have eliminated the single member LLC as an option in IRA. But as of now, it's still allowed. And basically, this allows the client to manage an LLC that his or her IRA owns. So why would somebody want to do that? Most people don't need it. I mean, if you just have one piece of property in there, you don't really need it. Midland can hold title to the property. Midland can handle the cash flow. Midland can receive the rent. You can direct Midland to pay the bills. You really don't need to go through the expense of forming a single member LLC. It's just an added cost and ongoing maintenance cost. But for somebody that wants to take control, they want to have, let's just say, 5 properties in their single member LLC. They can pay the bills out of the LLC for all of their properties. They could deposit the income. They don't have to go to Midland every time they need something. And their fees are a little cheaper because remember, our administrative fees are like $325 a year, but that's per asset. If we're just holding one LLC, that's one asset, even if that LLC has 5 assets within it. So, but for our standard client, our typical client only holds, I think, 1.2 investments, and they typically don't need a checkbook control or single member LLC. We can handle it without them having to spend the money on the formation cost and ongoing maintenance cost.
Yeah, and just to, to sort of add a piece while we're on the topic of the LLCs, that is something as well. We had mentioned sort of at the beginning of the slide, I do work with Midland Forms as well, which is an extension of Midland. We can help essentially with the filing process and actually with creating even operating agreements for a single or multi-member LLC using your IRA. Brandon had sort of mentioned there that there's things like you don't want to wade into prohibited transactions, or you want to make sure that the language of the LLC is set up so that there wouldn't be a question about personal ownership versus ownership in the IRA. We can help you navigate that, and so that is something. If you did have more questions about sort of that process, state by state filing, because it does differ depending on what state you file an LLC in. Some of these filing things, like I said, there can be some steps to them, and so we are happy to help through Midland Forms to help you navigate that sort of process with the actual setup of a single member or multi-member LLC for your IRA. Because there are, like I said, there are some important points that you would want to be aware of as far as like what would need to be in an operating agreement and that sort of thing.
That's good. Yeah, thank you for pointing us to that resource, Nick. Again, for everyone else, if you are considering using the single or multi-member LLC within a self-directed IRA, Midland Forms performs a fantastic service for our clients who are looking to do that. You don't even have to be a client for Midland Forms to set up an LLC for you, but Nick and his team are going to have you in good hands if you do decide to go down that path. So thanks for pointing us to that resource, Nick.
Absolutely.
One thing that I do want to kind of put out for you, everybody here, is that we are doing another webinar specifically about IRA LLCs. So we have this spring education series that we're going through right now that I'm helping host. And on Wednesday, May 10th at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, that's when most of our webinars will be going on. We will be doing an everything you need to know about IRA LLCs webinar. And Nick's associate, Amy Ayers, will be joining us along with Whitney Pope. And so if you guys are interested in learning more from the individuals who are at the ground level creating these IRA LLCs and helping set them up, that's going to be a wonderful opportunity for those questions to be had right there. Again, we'll be sending an email with all that information once we follow up with you guys after the webinar today. So as we end our time here today, I do want to point everybody to some available resources. Nick, if you want to talk a little bit about where we can find these and some examples that we see here about those resources.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we one part of being an IRA custodian and one part of Midland that we do want to communicate and really make sure everyone's aware of is that we want our clients and just people in general to be more aware of what you can do in an IRA and sort of rules around it. It can be a little, it can be a little opaque sometimes with trying to understand self-directed versus, just general IRAs. And so we have put together over the years, as this business has grown, a number of different guides to help you, educate and just learn a little bit more about the industry, learn a little bit more about what these sorts of things can do for you and can mean for your retirement, and all sorts of ways that they're applicable. So we do have these guides. We have a understanding self-directed IRAs to give you kind of a broad scope overview, like we've sort of talked about here, but more in-depth and drilled down about details, about the history of those and about how they could be relevant to your situation. We also have one on real estate IRAs that's very relevant, specifically for those looking to invest in real estate, with ideas about, just again, rulings that have been made, the sort of rules and things that you should look to follow as far as doing real estate sales, and again, how Midland can assist in that process. And then we also have a guide that helps you understand prohibited transactions, prohibited persons. Again, the IRS, a lot of the times, these rulings are what build out the rules for IRAs. And so this guide can help you sort of understand previous rulings and how that impacts who can, transact with your IRA. And again, specific things just to look out for, again, to give you that confidence that what you're doing, not only is economically relevant to your situation, but it's, by the board, and that there's nothing that you would need to worry about specifically. So again, these can kind of help give you a better idea if you're still looking at like investment options, trying to get some ideas. Just great resources. They're right on the resources page on midlandtrust.com. So right at the top there, there'll be a page that says resources. And these, as well as some other guides and education resources, will be there for you.
Yeah. Thanks so much, Nick. And Brandon, if you want to speak briefly about some of the video resources that we have available as well through our Midland University program, where can we find those?
Sure, Stephen, you're actually going to send out a link to everybody when this is over. And so there are a lot of good classes. We started Midland University, I think like 10 years ago. And we used to give a certificate if you went through certain classes. You were like the local expert in self-directed. But we have classes that we just put on there for people to learn now. Some of our competitors, I'm not going to name names, but they try to convince you to pay $3,000 to fly to Washington, D.C., and they do a boot camp, and you're going to learn everything you need to know about self-directed IRAs over this whole weekend. And while I'm sure it would have been a fun weekend and you would enjoyed the trip and seeing Washington, D.C., we can provide the same amount of information, free of charge through our website. We have a lot of these classes just readily available to anybody who wants them. So when we get done here, I appreciate you sending out the link to everybody. And If anybody ever has any questions, feel free to contact us, and we can talk to you on a one-on-one basis.
Yeah, absolutely. And speaking about Midland University and the value that we keep trying to show everyone, we do care about your curiosity. That's why we put so much about education and information on our website to service those questions as much as possible. But another resource that we do have at Midland is our dedicated service representative team. If you have a Midland IRA account, we're not expecting you to go through this alone. We have dedicated service representatives here at Midland that are trained specifically to assist the investment that you are making. And so we have a team dedicated to real estate, a team dedicated to doing futures. We have a team that's dedicated to doing private placements and handling those subscription documents. And so you're not going through this alone. You do have a well-trained team that is prepared to assist you every step of the way. And that comes with a name, a phone number, and an email address. Our key here is being accessible and being responsive to you here in the space of self-direction. Some other benefits that you do have in working with Midland Trust is we do have the ability for you to receive payments and send out payments from your IRA electronically. We have an online payment portal, which makes it easy for anyone that's either renting property from you or making note payments to you to get your IRA paid. We want to simplify this process for you. So we've invested a lot of resources in creating that online portal for our clients and for your renters and payees. One other thing is that we're also an employee-owned company. Every time you pick up the phone and talk to someone here at Midland Trust, you're probably talking to an employee owner. Nick, Brandon, and myself, we're all owners here at Midland Trust Company. We have a vested interest in making sure that your interaction with us is successful. You go away from that interaction thinking, man, like that went super easy. And so that's something that I do want to put out for you guys, and understanding that when you're working with Midland Trust, you're working with a different breed of self-directed IRA custodian. You're working with owners. And so that's something that is very important to our culture and very important to the experience here. So the way that you get started at Midland Trust, for those who are wondering, simple process. Step one is to open a self-directed IRA at midlandtrust.com. You can open a real estate IRA, you can open a private placement IRA, you can find all the IRA options there at midlandtrust.com. You can even fund your account during the application process. We had a question here about like, hey, I have a TD Ameritrade account. How do I get that into an IRA? Well, the answer is through the online application, and you'll find all the information, all of the instructions on how to do that at midlandtrust.com. We also have our dedicated service representative at step 3 who will be assisting you in making your investment here at Midland Trust. And so as you're going through investment documents, as you're preparing to make that investment, send out your retirement funds for that investment, we have that dedicated service representative walking through each step of the way. With that being said, we want to open it up to any last questions that you guys have. This is my information as promised. Please take this down. I am a resource to you in order to get your questions answered. So if you have anything that you would like to ask, either here in the chat in the webinar, let us know. For questions that we weren't able to discuss either in the chat or during the webinar today, we will be following up with you via email. So let us know. But here's my contact information for anyone else who has questions. But that being said, the floor is open. We're going to give it about another 30 seconds for someone to type a question. If we don't see any, we will be signing off. But the floor is yours.
I have answered a lot of questions already between slides, Stephen. So hopefully there's probably a few that I missed. We'll go back through when we're done here and email some people if we didn't answer your question.
Mm-hmm. Okay, Paul, I will be sending an email out, Paul, at the end of this webinar. Well, first, let me say this. Everyone who has signed up for this webinar will be receiving a recording of this entire webinar. In fact, you're going to be seeing a recording of me saying that we'll have a recording, so you'll be able to see that. And so there's going to be that sent out to everybody. So if you joined for a little bit, or if you couldn't make it at all, or if you just want to hear this again, a recording will be going out. We'll also be putting this on our YouTube page. So everyone will have that. My information will be included in that recording, but also I'll be sending an email from my email address to everyone here, following up with you. Thank you for joining this webinar and giving me the opportunity to ask more questions.
Stephen, we did have several questions about whether you could do this in a SEP or a Roth, and I want to reiterate, for some people came in late probably, but it doesn't matter what type of account. Any account can be self-directed. You could have a self-directed IRA at Charles Schwab where you're picking out your own stocks. Okay, so remember, self-directed is a made-up term. The rules that we follow are the exact same rules that Charles Schwab and Fidelity follow. The IRS forms that we send out are exactly the same as the IRS forms that they send out. The only difference is that we allow clients to hold a much broader range of investment options because we don't benefit from them buying stocks. So don't get confused with self-directed as a special type of IRA. It's really a special custodian is what it is. So I'll leave it with that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you so much. We had a question about different investments that can be made within a self-directed IRA. As a reminder, Midland Trust, we don't offer or sell investments. And so typically what a typical self-directed IRA client will do is they find deals out there in their circles or in their environments that they're at, and they find that deal and bring it to Midland in order to invest in it. So if we have a situation where someone's looking to put their money into like an interest-bearing account, like say through a stockbroker or a bank, those are funds that can be sent from Midland over to those institutions that you choose. Midland, we don't have a list of those individuals because we're not fiduciaries. We're not trying to have you choose one over the other necessarily. But if you have a stockbroker or a bank that is willing to receive self-directed IRA money as an IRA, we can certainly begin the process of working with their investment documents to get your IRA connected to their platform. Okay. All right. Well, I think that we have been able to answer most of the questions here. Ronald, I do see that you asked a question about where you can find the course material. It's at midlandtrust.com. I'm going to be sending an email out to everyone with that information. Well, with that being said, thank you, Brandon. Thank you, Nicholas, for joining us today. It was an honor to be able to speak with you. For everyone else, thank you for joining us today. Have a great rest of your day. Please contact us with any questions that you have, and we'll see you at our next webinar. Have a good day.